Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Rain hammered against the hospital windows as Grayson Holt burst through the emergency room doors. His boots squeaked against the polished floor, leaving puddles in his wake. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting his face in a sickly glow. "My son," he gasped to the nurse at the station. "Brennan Holt. Car accident. Where is he?" The nurse's face shifted from professional detachment to something softer. Something worse. Grayson felt his stomach drop. "Sir, if you could follow me," she said. Already walking down the corridor, Grayson's heart pounded against his ribcage as he trailed behind her. Each step felt like walking through concrete. The nurse pushed open a door, revealing a doctor in a white coat hovering over a bed where a teenage boy lay utterly still, connected to machines that beeped and hissed. Brennan. His boy. "Mr. Holt." The doctor approached, clipboard in hand. "I'm Dr. Mercer." Grayson barely heard him. His eyes were fixed on his son's face. Brennan's skin was ashen, a stark contrast to the angry red gash that ran across his forehead. A breathing tube snaked down his throat. "What happened?" Grayson asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Single vehicle accident. Your son's car veered off Pinewood Road and hit a tree. Speed was a factor." Dr. Mercer cleared his throat. "Mr. Holt, your son suffered significant trauma. We've induced a coma to reduce brain swelling. But he'll wake up." It wasn't a question. The doctor's pause lasted a beat too long. "We're doing everything we can. The next 48 hours will be critical." Grayson moved to his son's bedside, reaching for the limp hand that once gripped tools beside him in the garage. Brennan's fingers were cold. "Low chances," Dr. Mercer continued. "I want to be honest with you. The impact caused severe trauma. Even if he wakes, there could be permanent damage." The door swung open again. Elise, Grayson's wife, stood in the doorway. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled despite the rain, not a strand out of place. Her eyes swept over the room, landing briefly on her son before settling on the doctor. "How bad?" she asked, voice steady to doctor. Mercer repeated the prognosis. Elise nodded, arms folded across her chest. She didn't approach the bed. "We've done everything possible for now," the doctor concluded. "A nurse will check in regularly. If anything changes, we'll let you know immediately." After the doctor left, silence fell over the room. The only sounds were the steady beep of monitors and the patter of rain against glass. Grayson hadn't moved from Brennan's side. "They said his car was totaled," Elise said finally. "Insurance will be a nightmare." Grayson looked up at his wife. Her face was a mask. 17 years of marriage, and sometimes he felt he didn't know her at all. "Our son might die, Elise." She met his gaze, but her eyes were empty. "I know that, Grayson. Standing here won't change it." She checked her watch, pulled her coat tighter around herself. "I need to make some calls. I'll come back later." Without touching Brennan, without a backward glance, she left. The door clicked shut behind her. Alone with his son, Grayson let out a shuddering breath. He pulled a chair close to the bed and took Brennan's hand again. "I'm here, buddy," he whispered. "Dad's right here." As he adjusted Brennan's hospital gown, something slipped from the pocket of the hoodie they'd placed with his personal items. A small brass key fell onto the white sheet. Attached to it was a folded piece of paper. Grayson picked it up, carefully unfolding the note. The handwriting was unmistakably Brennan's, though shakier than usual. "Dad, use this to unlock what's inside." Grayson stared at the words, then at his son's face. What did Brennan want him to find? And why hadn't he just told him? He slipped the key and note into his pocket, a weight heavier than metal settling in his chest point. 3 days later, Brennan's condition remained unchanged. The doctor spoke in careful terms about waiting and patience, but Grayson heard what they didn't say. Hope was dwindling that he returned home only to shower and change clothes. The house felt wrong without Brennan in it, too quiet, too empty. Elise came and went, citing work obligations and insurance paperwork. She visited the hospital for exactly 30 minutes each day, standing at the foot of Brennan's bed before leaving again. On this night, exhaustion had driven Grayson home. Sleep evaded him. Instead, he found himself in Brennan's room, the brass key heavy in his palm. Brennan had wanted him to find something. But what? Grayson moved methodically through the room. He checked dresser drawers, the desk, the closet. Nothing seemed out of place. Brennan had always been organized, a trait he hadn't inherited from either parent. Sitting on the bed, Grayson noticed a slight unevenness in the floorboards near the window. He knelt down, running his fingers along the edge. One board moved slightly under pressure. Prying it up, he found a small space underneath, and within it, a metal lockbox. The key fit perfectly. Inside the box lay several items: a USB drive, a notebook, and a stack of photographs. Grayson picked up the photos first. His hands began to shake. Elise with another man. They sat close in a restaurant booth, walking together in the park, entering a motel. In each photo, she looked alive in a way she hadn't with Grayson for years, laughing, touching, leaning in. The last photo showed them kissing outside an unfamiliar cabin. The man wasn't a stranger to Grayson. Milo Everett, a contractor who had worked on their kitchen remodel last year. Younger than Grayson by 10 years, with an easy smile and smooth talk. The notebook contained dates, times, locations, all in Brennan's handwriting. He'd been tracking them, Grayson realized, for months. Notes in the margins revealed Brennan's thoughts as he pieced together his mother's betrayal. Mom left at 7:30 p.m. Said working late. Saw her car at Lakeview Motel at 8:15. Watched from the coffee shop across street. Milo arrived first. Mom 10 minutes later. They stayed for 3 hours. They're planning something. Her mom on phone talking about insurance. The final entry was dated the day before the accident. Confronting Mom tomorrow. This ends now. With a growing sense of dread, Grayson plugged the USB drive in his laptop. A single audio file. He pressed play. Brennan's voice came through first, tight with anger. I know what you're doing, Mom. I've seen you with him. Elise's voice, sharp with surprise. What are you talking about? Have you been spying on me? I saw you at the cabin. I heard you talking about Dad's life insurance. About getting rid of problems. You don't understand what you heard. I understand enough. I'm telling Dad everything. Brennan, wait. A door slammed. Then the sound of a car engine starting, tires squealing. The recording ended. Grayson sat frozen, the pieces falling into place. His son hadn't lost control of his car. He'd been running from something or someone. The accident was no accident at all. He looked again at the photos, at the evidence his son had gathered. Brennan had been protecting him, and it had cost him everything. Rage rose in Grayson's chest, cold and precise. He carefully replaced everything in the lockbox except the key. Whatever happened next, he wouldn't need it again. He already knew what was inside: betrayal and a path to revenge. The next morning found Grayson back in a hospital chair, eyes fixed on the rhythmic rise and fall of Brennan's chest. Outside, the Oregon rain continued its steady beat against the window. 1 week since the crash, and still no change. I found your box, Grayson said quietly. Understand now, son. In the sterile silence, memories flooded back. Brennan at 8, carefully handing tools to Grayson as they worked on rebuilding an old engine in the garage. Like this, Dad? He'd asked, tiny hands gripping a wrench too big for him. That's right, buddy. Always use the right tool for the job. Grayson had ruffled his hair, pride swelling in his chest. You're going to be a natural. Another flash. Brennan at 12, learning to weld for the first time. The determined set of his jaw as he focused on keeping his hands steady. The way his face lit up when Grayson praised his first successful joint. You've got good hands, Grayson had told him. Patient hands. That's important. Always the two of them, building things together. Creating. While Elise watched from doorways, her smile growing thinner as the years passed. The memory shifted to their 15th anniversary dinner. Elise across the table, picking at her food, eyes distant. Is this really it, Grayson? She'd asked suddenly. Is this all we're going to be? A mechanic's shop in a rainy nowhere town. This is our life, he'd answered. The one we built together. She'd laughed thin, brittle and cold. The one you built. I just got pulled along. He hadn't understood then how deep her resentment ran. How completely the woman he married had vanished. Or perhaps she'd never existed at all. Perhaps the loving wife and mother was just a mask that had finally grown too heavy to wear. Your mom never wanted our life, Grayson told the unconscious Brennan. But she wanted what came with it. Security, respect in town, your future. He gripped the brass key in his pocket. She wasn't willing to give those up. Just me. Just you. He leaned forward, voice dropping to a whisper. They tried to kill you, son. They still might succeed. But I promise you this, they won't win. I won't let them. Grayson wasn't a man who believed in second chances. Mistakes could be fixed, but betrayal? That was a choice. And choices had consequences. I'll burn them to ash, he promised, pressing the key into Brennan's limp palm before slipping it back in his own pocket. Every last bit of them. As if in response, the rain pounded harder against the glass, drowning out the beeping monitors. You can't be serious. Raina Holt's eyes were wide with disbelief. Elise did this? To her own son? Grayson had called his sister the moment he left the hospital. Raina, 10 years his junior, and the only family he had left besides Brennan had arrived within the hour, her firefighter's uniform still smelling faintly of smoke. They sat in Grayson's kitchen, the evidence spread between them. Photos, notes, the USB drive with Brennan's final recording. I know how it sounds, Grayson said. It sounds like a nightmare. Raina pushed her dark hair back from her face. Have you gone to the police? With what? Photos of my wife cheating? An ambiguous recording that ends before anything happens? They'd laugh me out of the station. So what then? You just let them get away with it. Grayson's jaw tightened. No, I'll make them pay. Raina studied her brother's face, concern etching lines around her eyes. Gray, what are you planning to do? Whatever it takes. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. Raina sighed, reaching across the table to grip his hand. I'm with you. Whatever you need. But please, Gray, don't do anything that puts you on the wrong side of the law. Brennan needs you. I need you. Later that afternoon, a soft knock on the hospital room door roused Grayson from his vigil. A young woman with copper hair and anxious eyes peered in. Mr. Holt? I'm Cora, Brennan's friend. Grayson nodded. He'd seen her before, studying with Brennan at the kitchen table. Come in, Cora. She approached the bed hesitantly, eyes filling with tears at the sight of Brennan. Has there been any change? Not yet. Grayson offered her the chair, but she shook her head. I can't stay long. She twisted her hands together. I needed to see him, and to talk to you. Something in her tone made Grayson alert. About what? Cora glanced at the door, then lowered her voice. Brennan told me things. About his mom. About what he found out. When? The day of the accident. He called me that morning. He was upset, said he was going to confront his mom about the affair. She swallowed hard. And about something else. Grayson kept his voice level. What else, Cora? He said he'd seen her with this guy Milo at a cabin. That they were talking about insurance money and making plans. Cora's eyes flicked to Brennan. He said he'd heard Milo tell her that problems could be solved permanently. That scared him. He thought they might be talking about you. Did he say anything else? About the accident. Cora shook her head. Just that he was going to talk to his mom, then come straight to me. But he never showed up. She wiped at her eyes. Mr. Holt, I think Brennan was scared of them. Really scared. The last few weeks, he was always looking over his shoulder, taking pictures, writing things down. Did anyone else know about this? Did he tell anyone else? No, just me. Cora reached out tentatively, touching Brennan's arm. He trusted me. When she left, Grayson sat back in his chair, processing this new information. It wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just about Elise wanting out of their marriage. They had been planning something that involved insurance money. And now Brennan was in a coma, barely clinging to life. The pieces were forming a picture. An ugly one that, as the day shifted to evening, Grayson made a decision. He would find out exactly what Elise and Milo were planning. And to do that, he needed to find them 0.2 days past before Grayson spotted Milo's truck, a black Ford with custom wheels parked outside the hardware store. While Milo was inside, Grayson crouched beside the rear tire and quickly attached a small GPS tracker he'd purchased online. A simple device, untraceable. Back at the hospital, he monitored the tracker's movement on his phone. Milo drove through town, stopped briefly at a liquor store, then headed out on Highway 26 toward the mountains. For 3 consecutive evenings, Grayson tracked the truck's movements. Each time, it followed the same pattern, ending at a location deep in the forest, miles from the main road. On the fourth day, Grayson followed that he parked his own vehicle half a mile from the GPS marker and continued on foot. The rain had finally stopped, but the forest floor remained soggy, masking his footsteps. Through the trees, a cabin came into view, rustic, isolated. A curl of smoke rose from the chimney. Milo's truck was parked outside. Beside it sat a car. Grayson recognized instantly Elise's silver BMW. Heart pounding, he circled the property, keeping to the tree line. Through a side window, he caught glimpses of them, Elise pacing, gesturing animatedly. Milo seated at a table, head in his hands. They were arguing. Grayson moved closer, finding a spot behind a woodpile near a partially open window. "Can't just leave now," Milo was saying. "People are already talking. If we run, we might as well confess. And if we stay, what then?" Elise's voice was sharp. "We wait for him to wake up and tell everyone what he knows. He might never wake up." The doctor said, "Doctors are wrong all the time." A glass shattered against a wall. "We need to stick to the plan." The plan was for an accident, clean, simple. Not this mess. Not your kid in a coma with half the town bringing casseroles to your doorstep. "Don't you think I know that?" Elise's voice broke. "But we're committed now. We have the papers ready, the accounts set up. Once the insurance pays out, if it pays out, they investigate suspicious deaths, you know. It's not a death. It's a tragic accident. And his father is too broken to think straight, let alone ask questions." Grayson's hands curled into fists, nails digging into his palms. "You don't know your husband very well," Milo muttered at a bitter laugh from Elise. "I know exactly who Grayson is. Predictable. Steady. Boring as watching paint dry. He'll grieve exactly as expected, throw himself into work. Visit the hospital daily, never questioning a thing." Grayson slipped away from the window, circling to the back of the cabin. A small window there revealed what looked like a bedroom. No one inside. Carefully, he tried the window. Locked. With a rock from the ground, he tapped just enough to break the glass near the latch without making too much noise. The argument inside continued. Covering the sound, he reached through, unlocked the window, and pulled himself inside. The bedroom was sparsely furnished, just a bed and dresser. On the dresser lay several documents. Grayson took out his phone and quickly photographed them. Driver's licenses with Elise's and Milo's photos, but different names. Bank statements for accounts he'd never heard of. And most damning of all, Brennan's life insurance policy, taken out on his 16th birthday, with Elise as the sole beneficiary. The signature on the bottom, a clumsy forgery of Grayson's own. They hadn't just been having an affair. They'd been planning to kill his son, collect the insurance, and disappear with new identities. When Brennan discovered them, they tried to silence him permanently. Grayson slipped back out the window, careful to leave everything as he found it. By the time he reached his car, a plan was forming in his mind. They thought they knew him, predictable, steady Grayson. They were about to discover how wrong they were. Back at the hospital, he shared everything with Raina. "We need to go to the police now," she insisted. "This is proof." "It's circumstantial at best," Grayson replied. "Photos I took while breaking and entering. They'd have better lawyers than we can afford." "No, we need to be smarter. We need them to make mistakes." "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we turn their plan against them. Make them so paranoid they reveal themselves." "And how do we do that?" Grayson's eyes were cold. "By becoming their worst nightmare." Deputy Nolan Cade's office was small, but meticulously organized. Hunting trophies adorned one wall. Family photos covered another. He'd been with the sheriff's department for 20 years and knew everyone in town. When the manila envelope arrived on his desk with no return address, his curiosity was piqued. Inside were photos of Elise Holt with Milo Everett in various compromising positions and a note. "Look deeper." Cade stared at the images, frowning. Grayson Holt was a respected business owner. His son was fighting for his life. And here was evidence his wife was cheating with a man who had a record minor drug charges years back. But still, it wasn't a crime to have an affair. But something about the timing nagged at him. Brennan's accident had been ruled just that, an accident. Single vehicle, bad weather. But what if it wasn't? He slipped the envelope into his drawer. Worth keeping an eye on, at least. Across town, Milo Everett arrived at the construction site to find his tools missing from the company's shed. His foreman called him into the office, expression grim. "Got a call yesterday," the foreman said. "Anonymous tip that you've been stealing materials. Taking kickbacks from suppliers." "That's bullshit," Milo protested. "Maybe so, but the client heard about it, and they don't want you on the project anymore. I'm about to let you go, Milo." As Milo stormed to his truck, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We know what you did." At the local diner, Elise picked at her salad, aware of the whispers from nearby tables. Normally, she thrived on attention, the beautiful wife of Grayson Holt, with her perfect clothes and perfect smile. But lately, the gazes felt different. Colder. More coffee. The waitress Tina, whose son played baseball with Brennan, stood beside the table, pot in hand. "Please," Elise said, offering her cup. Tina filled it, then hesitated. "How's Brennan doing?" "The same." Elise tried to infuse her voice with maternal concern. "And Grayson? He must be devastated." "We all are." Tina's eyes narrowed slightly. "Well, we're all praying for your family. For those who deserve prayers, anyway." Before Elise could respond, Tina moved on to the next table. That evening, Elise found Grayson in the kitchen, making coffee. It was the first time they'd been alone together since Brennan's accident. "People are talking," she said without preamble. Grayson didn't look up. "About what?" "About me. About Milo." At this, Grayson turned, his face unreadable. "Should they be?" Elise faltered. "What does that mean?" "It means our son is fighting for his life, and you're worried about gossip." "I'm not just worried about." She stopped, composing herself. "I'm worried about you, Gray. You're barely sleeping, barely eating. This isn't healthy. Don't pretend to care now." His voice was flat. "It doesn't suit you." He brushed past her, coffee in hand. "Where are you going?" she called after him. "Hospital. Where our son is. Where you should be." After he left, Elise called Milo. "We need to talk," she said, voice tight. "Something's wrong." Meanwhile, Grayson met with Raina at her apartment. Her living room had become their war room, photos, notes, and plans covering every surface. "It's working," Grayson said. "They're getting nervous." "I talked to my friend at the DEA," Raina replied. "Like you asked. Turns out they've had an eye on Milo's family for a while. His cousin runs a distribution network out of Portland. They've suspected Milo of money laundering, but never had enough evidence. Now they will," Grayson said, sliding a USB drive across the table. "Records from the cabin, bank transfers, offshore accounts, everything they need." Raina picked up the drive, hesitant. "Gray, if they find out you broke in." "They won't." "Anonymous tip. Untraceable." "And what happens when they arrest Milo?" "What about Elise?" Grayson's smile was cold. "Let her run. The harder she runs, the guiltier she looks." The trap was set. Now all they had to do was watch them fall. The call came at 3:17 a.m., jolting Grayson from a fitful sleep on the couch. Dr. Mercer's voice, tight with urgency. "Mr. Holt, you need to come to the hospital. Your son is showing signs of increased brain activity." Grayson broke every speed limit on the way. Rain lashed against his windshield, the Oregon sky weeping again after days of respite. In the hospital room, monitors beeped with new rhythm. A nurse adjusted in 4, while Dr. Mercer examined Brennan's pupils with a penlight. "What's happening?" Grayson demanded. "His intracranial pressure has normalized," Dr. Mercer explained. "He's responding to stimuli. These are good signs, Mr. Holt. Very good signs." Grayson took his spot beside the bed, gripping Brennan's hand. "Can he hear me?" "Possibly. Talk to him. It might help." For hours, Grayson talked about the garage, about rebuilding an engine they'd started before the accident, about anything except what he'd discovered. Outside, dawn broke through the clouds, casting weak sunlight across the room. It was in that golden light that Brennan's fingers twitched against his palm. "Brennan." Grayson leaned forward, heart hammering. "Son, can you hear me?" Brennan's eyelids fluttered. Once, twice, then opened, revealing disoriented blue eyes that slowly focused on Grayson's face. "Dad," he rasped, voice barely audible through cracked lips. "I'm here, buddy." Tears spilled down Grayson's cheeks. I'm right here. Brennan swallowed painfully. You found the key? A small laugh escaped Grayson. Yes, son. I found it. As the day progressed, Brennan drifted in and out of consciousness. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, but warned of a long recovery ahead. Tests would be needed to assess any potential damage. Grayson called Raina with the news, then, after hesitation, Elise. Her reaction was guarded. That's wonderful, she said, voice tight. I'll try to come by later. She never showed. That evening, as Brennan slept, Raina arrived with coffee and a troubled expression. We have a problem, she said once they were alone in the hospital cafeteria. I spoke with my contact at the DEA again. The evidence we sent them is compelling, but there's a snag. Milo's brother, Judge Everett, Grayson supplied. Yes, he's intervening, calling in favors, questioning the source of the evidence. The investigation is being buried. Grayson's jaw tightened. They're not going to do anything, not officially, not yet. Raina hesitated, but my friend made a suggestion. If they had something they couldn't ignore, something public, what kind of something? A raid based on an anonymous tip that leads to actual evidence. Drugs, cash, the works. Grayson considered this. And where would this evidence come from? Raina met his gaze steadily. That's where things get complicated. Later that night, after Raina left, Grayson sat beside his sleeping son, turning over options in his mind. He'd promised Brennan justice. He'd promised to burn the betrayers to ash. But he had to be careful. One wrong move, and he could lose everything. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Cabin. Tonight. 11 p.m. Come alone. Bring what you have. The message wasn't signed, but Grayson recognized the number from Brennan's notes. Milo.it was a trap, of course, but perhaps one he could turn to his advantage. At 10:30 p.m., Grayson pulled in the hospital parking lot, where Raina waited in her car. This is insane, she said as he slid into the passenger seat. They could kill you. They could try. Grayson checked his watch. You called your friend? Yes. They'll be there at midnight, approaching from the north side of the property. But Gray, you need to be gone by then. I will be. He pulled out a small recorder. As soon as I get what we need. The cabin was lit up when they drove past, parking half a mile down the road. Through the trees, Grayson could see Milo's truck and Elise's BMW. Wait here, he told Raina. If I'm not back in 30 minutes, call Cade. The walk to the cabin seemed both too long and too short. Milo was waiting on the porch, arms crossed over his chest. Beside him stood Elise, her face pale in the porch light. You came? Milo said, surprise evident in his voice. Didn't think you had the guts. Grayson kept his expression neutral. You asked me to bring what I have. Here it is. He held up a USB drive, not the one with the evidence, but an identical copy. Milo's eyes narrowed. What's on it? Everything. The photos, the recordings, the insurance policies. Give it to me. Milo stepped forward, hand outstretched. Not until I know why. Grayson looked at Elise. Why our son? Why Brennan? For a moment, Elise said nothing. Then, it wasn't supposed to be him. It was supposed to be you. Me. The plan was simple, she continued, voice flat. We stage an accident, your accident. I collect the insurance, we disappear. But Brennan found out. He confronted me, threatened to tell you everything. So you try to kill him instead. We didn't try to kill anyone. Milo interjected. The kid ran off upset, drove too fast in the rain. That's on him. Grayson's hand tightened around the recorder in his pocket. And the brake lines? Were those on him too? A flash of confusion crossed Milo's face. What brake lines? The ones that were cut. The mechanic found it when they towed in what was left of his car. It was a lie. The police report had cited driver error in weather conditions. But the panic that flashed across Elise's face told Grayson what he needed to know. I didn't. She began. The sound of vehicles approaching cut her off. Headlights swept through the trees, not from the direction Raina had said the DEA would come, but from the main road. You brought the cops. Milo snarled, reaching behind his back. Before Grayson could respond, the night erupted in chaos. DEA agents swarmed the property from all directions, shouting commands. Milo pulled a gun, a revolver that glinted in the porch light, but never got shot off. 3 agents tackled him to the ground. Elise tried to run, but made it only a few steps before being caught. As she was cuffed, her eyes found Grayson's, filled with cold fury. "This isn't over," she hissed. "Yes," Grayson replied, watching his agents enter the cabin. "It is." Inside, they found exactly what Raina's friend had promised would be their cash, drugs, forged documents bearing Elise's and Milo's false identities. Everything needed to bury them both. As he walked away from the cabin, Grayson deleted the recording he'd made. He wouldn't need it now. The evidence would speak for itself. The county jail was a stark concrete building on the edge of town. Grayson sat in the visitation room, hands folded on the metal table, waiting. When the door opened, Elise stepped through, dressed in an orange jumpsuit that made her look smaller somehow. Less polished, less certain. She sat across from him, eyes defiant despite the shadows beneath them. "You don't look surprised to see me," she said. "Should I be? Most husbands wouldn't visit the wife who betrayed them." Grayson's expression remained impassive. "Most wives don't try to kill their sons. I didn't try to kill Brennan." Her voice cracked slightly. "I never want to hurt him. It was Milo's idea, all of it. But you went along with it." She looked away. "I was unhappy. You have to understand that. For years, I felt trapped in a life I never chose. You and Brennan, you were so close, so content with everything being the same day after day. I wanted more. So you found it with Milo. I found someone who saw me as more than just your wife." Brennan's mother. A tear slipped down her cheek. "I never meant for him to get hurt. But he did get hurt. He's still hurt. How is he?" The question seemed genuine. "Recovering. The doctors say he might walk again with therapy." Pain flashed across her face. "Gray, please. You have to believe me. I didn't cut the brake lines. I wouldn't know how. But Milo would. He says he didn't either. He says." She stopped. "It doesn't matter what he says. Nobody believes us." "No," Grayson agreed. "They don't." Silence stretched between them. Outside, rain began to fall again, pattering against the small window high on the wall. "Why are you here, Gray?" Elise finally asked. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. "Divorce papers. Already filled out. All you need to do is sign." She stared at them, then at him. "That's it? After 17 years, that's all you have to say to me?" Grayson slid the folder across the table. Clipped to the top page was Brennan's note, still attached to the small brass key. "You deserve each other," Grayson said, quoting the note. "Those are the only words I have left for you." He stood to leave. Elise's hand shot out, grabbing his wrist. "You did this," she whispered, realization dawning in her eyes. "The raid. The evidence. It was all you." Grayson gently removed her hand. "Goodbye, Elise. They'll figure it out. They'll know you set us up. Maybe." He turned to the door. "But by then, it won't matter. You'll both be exactly where you belong." As he walked out, he heard her call after him. "I never stopped loving you, Gray." "Not really." He didn't look back. Outside the jail, Raina waited in her car, rain drumming on the roof. "It's done?" she asked as he slid into the passenger seat. "It's done." In the following weeks, the case made headlines across the state. Milo Everett, charged with drug trafficking, money laundering, identity theft, and attempted murder. His brother, the judge, forced to recuse himself amid accusations of impropriety. Elise Holt, caught in the same net despite her protestations of innocence. The town that had once admired her now whispered behind their hands as her pristine reputation crumbled. The devoted wife and mother revealed as a schemer willing to sacrifice her own son for freedom and money. Through it all, Grayson remained silent. He focused on Brennan's recovery, on rebuilding what had been broken. He never spoke of revenge or justice. He didn't need to. The truth had done that work for him. 3 months after the accident, Brennan came home. He moved with the aid of a walker, his once athletic frame thin from hospital confinement. But he was alive, healing. The house had changed in his absence. Elise's belongings were gone. The spaces she once occupied refilled with photographs of Brennan and Grayson, of Raina, of a life that would continue without her. "Where's all Mom's stuff?" Brennan asked as Grayson helped him to the couch. "Donated. Grayson replied simply, "We're starting fresh." Brennan nodded, understanding in his eyes. Did she ever say why? She said a lot of things. None of them matter now. That evening, as twilight settled over the house, Grayson built a fire in the backyard pit. Brennan sat nearby, wrapped in a blanket despite the mild spring evening. From a box beside him, Grayson pulled the last photograph of Elise, their family portrait from Christmas the year before. 3 smiling faces, none of them genuine. "We should keep it," Brennan said suddenly. "To remember." Grayson paused, studying his son's face. "Remember what?" "That people aren't always what they seem. That we need to watch out for each other." After a moment, Grayson nodded and returned the photo to the box. The rest of the contents, the evidence from the lockbox, the copies of documents, the brass key itself, he fed to the flames. They didn't need those anymore. Raina arrived with dinner, making herself at home in the kitchen. She'd been staying in their guest room since Brennan's accident, helping with his care, bringing light back into their wounded household. "We're going to be okay," she told Grayson as they washed dishes later. "You know that, right?" "I know," he agreed, and found that he meant it. The next morning, Grayson rose early. On the front porch, tools spread around him. He worked methodically to remove the old door lock the one Elise's key had opened for 17 years. In its place, he installed a new one. Simple, secure, a brass deadbolt with 2 keys. Brennan watched from the doorway, leaning on his walker. New beginnings? Something like that. Grayson tested the lock, then held out one of the keys. "Just 2 now. You and me." Brennan took it, the metal warm in his palm. "No more secrets. No more secrets." Grayson agreed. As Brennan turned to go back inside, he paused. "Dad, do you think you'll ever forgive her?" Grayson looked out at the driveway where Elise's car had once parked, where she'd once stood in the rain, laughing as he chased her to the door, where she'd later planned his death and nearly caused their sons. "No," he said simply. "Some things can't be forgiven, but they can be survived." He pocketed his key and followed his son inside, closing the door firmly behind them. In the silence of their home, broken only by the quiet sounds of healing and rebuilding, justice had been served. Not by law alone, but by a father's relentless love and determination. A love that wouldn't forgive, but would protect. A love that had burned betrayal to ash and built something stronger from the remains.